Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. Hi, and welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast. I'm your fabulous host, Shanasia Washington, based here in the beautiful Houston, Texas. And today we have another amazing guest for you. You know, this is a space where we champion authenticity, we amplify voices, and we really want women to step into their calling and share what has been given to them. So without further ado, we're going to bring up our next amazing guest. She's going to tell us her name, where she's calling in from or joining us from, and just tap into her story.
Hello, I am Keana Shatteen, and I am live today with you from Chicago, Illinois. Well, actually, Oakland, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. And I am here today to share my story of survival. I'm here to share my story of how I turned my pain into purpose. And what I mean by that is 5 years ago, I went through the most difficult moment of my life. I had a suicide attempt. And since that time, I have been able to rebuild my life of passion and purpose, and finally realizing that my experience wasn't something that was supposed to hinder me or make me a victim, but my experience is here to teach others that they're not alone in their journeys. Because I know we all feel alone. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to talk about mental and emotional health. But guess what? You're not alone. The more we start talking about this, the more we start encouraging others to share their story and to say, I'm not okay today, or to say, I don't want to be alive today, or to say, I am dealing with a lot right now and I need help. It is okay. I'm here to let you know, soulmates, that you are not alone. We are all strong. We all have something inside of us that gets us through these journeys, through the difficulties in life, because we were born this way. God made us this way. Our struggles are there to teach us lessons so that we can grow, we can evolve, and then we can teach others the same. I am here to share my story of survival, as I am doing a pre-order now for my new book, Healing Out Loud, which is my story of how I was able to rebuild my life from the lowest of the lows to sitting here with you today, realizing that my story needed to be shared with the masses so that I can save lives. Healing Out Loud is available now for pre-order, and it will be released in September during Suicide Awareness Month. Because as a suicide survivor, it is my duty to share a voice, to share my voice, and to speak on behalf of those that are no longer here to speak. I'm here on behalf of the survivors, those that are still struggling, to let them know that I see you. My book explains my journey, the things that I did to help rebuild my life, and to discover that everything that happened for me. And I was not a victim. My book would explain to you how to get to that moment in your own journeys, in your own struggles. I was going through a very difficult time. I was going through a divorce, and I was dealing with things that I had never experienced before. So my story, Healing Out Loud, is for the woman that is going through a separation. Healing Out Loud is for the woman that is doing the best that she can to get up every day, to go to work, to be there for her family, to be there for her friends, to be there for the employer, but she's not there for herself. My book, Healing Out Loud, is for those people that can't get up out of bed in the morning, because I've been there, and you are not alone.
Keana, that's very powerful because I think that there are so many people that suffer in silence. And we talked about this briefly before, we came on, and there is a stigma to suffering,
Mhm.
right? There is a stigma to saying this doesn't work. People is going to paint it all up. Everything looks pretty. We're still functioning. We're still raising kids. We're still going
Mhm.
to work. We're doing all these things. But that silent place where no one can actually
Yes.
see is the place that typically bogs us down. So you were very vulnerable, and I thank you for your courage before you came on and talking about your suicide attempt, which was back in 2019. Which honestly, Keana, that wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't.
If
It
we
wasn't.
if we actually think about it, I mean, we're only in 2024. So that
Mhm.
wasn't that long ago that you were. We see this version of you that's sitting in front of us now, but then there was this version of 2019 where Keana did not have it all together and she thought about ending it all. So I want you to take us kind of back to 2019. You talked about some of those factors. I think you mentioned divorce as related to why you felt that way. But I want you to talk about some of those factors and what made you feel that at that point there was not a way out potentially.
So for me, my biggest trigger, and I know for all of us, we always hear this word trigger, trigger. For me, I was triggered whenever somebody would leave my life, whenever I felt like I was about to be alone, because I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of abandonment because of losing my mom when I was younger and some other things going on in my personal life. When my husband and I decided, or I should say my husband was my husband, when we decided to go our separate ways, I was afraid. I was feeling guilty because of everything that I did during the marriage. I was feeling guilty because I felt like I failed as a mother. I was feeling guilty because I felt like I failed as a woman. So, all the guilt, all the stories, all the things that I had tried to suppress over the years, I couldn't do it anymore. I could no longer outrun myself. And my mind told me that the only option was to just end it. That was my only option. In my mind, I thought that that was the best solution because I wasn't connected to my heart and listening to my soul and to my spirit and God. So that's why I made the choice that that was going to be my last day, because in my mind, I actually felt like that was it. My husband and I are no longer together. My mother and father are no longer here. Who do I have? In my mind, I thought I was completely alone in this world, and I didn't know how to do that. This is my first time being alone as a woman, as a single Black woman in my mid 30s. I was terrified of dating, of starting over, of just being by myself, not realizing that I already had everything I needed in me. I had my own strength. I just didn't know it was there.
You know, that's really powerful because that alone time is really, I think, sometimes what makes that fight, right? Because sometimes
Yes.
when we have, yeah, especially if you've come from, larger families and people are typically
Mm-hmm.
closer to you, sometimes when those people shift in their lives or something doesn't happen, it doesn't work out, or they have to transition on, we are, kind of left to think about, okay, what is this in us? And what basically are we going to do to navigate this space without the presence of whoever it is, mom, dad, husband,
Yeah.
whoever. And it's definitely a thing to think about. And I think for me, back in 2013, I talk about this very candidly on anything that I do. When I lost my aunt at 43 suddenly, she died and left three boys behind. And it made such a big void. And I was thinking,
Yeah.
like, why was it such a big void? I mean, there still wasn't like a lot of people around. And I think that was the first time I was able to kind of say, now, wait a minute, this space in life is different. What's in you? How are you going to overcome this? Because I just had never felt something that cut me so deeply. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very important, I think, in hearing Keana's story, is that she has admitted that alone space and not really knowing how to navigate beyond that was something that ignited, essentially feels like her purpose in the way that she's talking about it. So it's definitely interesting to hear that. Now, I want to talk to you about, I mean, and you did say alone, but sometimes when people are struggling, even people that are close to them, their mom, their dad, their friends, the friend circle, they have
Mm-hmm.
no idea. Like everything looks okay, right? Everything seems, she's still coming around, she's still dressing up, she still has this thing going. So I want you to talk about that dynamic of other people that were around you and you still kind of functioning, but really nobody had a clue what was going on?
That's a really good question because, like most people, I just got up, did what I had to do. I put on a mask. I put on a mask every day. The only person that really knew what I was going through was my husband. But because we were going through our circumstances, he wasn't able to be there and give me the support that I needed or encourage me to get the support that I needed. And that's not his fault because I didn't have it within myself either. But I just pretended like everything was okay. My boss, however, started to notice things. People at work can start to see because I became withdrawn. And even my friends later on, they did say, well, I started to notice that I became distant. I became quiet. I'm the friend who always wants to get together with my girls. But when I don't talk or when I am isolated, then that's a red flag. And most of my family and friends didn't realize that because they don't see me every day and we don't talk every day. But those are some things that I started doing that really you could tell I was really struggling. There would be days where I couldn't get out of bed. On the weekends, I laid in bed all day long. Sometimes when it would be family functions or I would get invites, I didn't have the energy to go. There have been plenty of holidays where I just laid in bed because I didn't have the strength to do it. But I made up an excuse and lied to the family and just said I wasn't feeling well. And no, I wasn't. Mentally, I wasn't well, but I was just afraid. And honestly, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was that I was feeling, but I just knew I just didn't feel right. And the only thing that I can do was just be still and just lay down and just sleep. And my solution was I wanted to go to sleep and not wake up. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. And you said something that really stuck out. You said, I just didn't know what it was. And there's so many people that are sitting out there right now and they can't put their finger on it, but it's just something that's not right. I would say in 2020, the pandemic was going on. I was kind of coming through the last part of my corporate career, which had led to be pretty toxic for the past 3 years. And then at that end of it, in 2021, when I left, I mean, there were just different components. Things were changing in terms of, my family and me having to be more of a caregiver. And I'm thinking about how do I shift all these parts? But then that burnout and overwhelm, I started to get that feeling of, I don't know what this is, but I know that something's different. I know that the way that I'm moving is a little bit different. So it's very important for us to check in, with ourselves to say that if this is not feeling good, you can be hidden from everybody else, but don't be hidden from you. Don't be hidden from yourself. You can't. It's a recipe for disaster. You have to call those things out. Would you agree? You have to call those things out.
Absolutely. And that's what I had to learn. As you mentioned, during the pandemic in particular, the world shut down for everybody. And this was right after I had my attempt, after I had went through the darkest moments in 19. So the pandemic was a saving grace for me because I didn't want to leave the house anyway. So when I was sitting at home every day during the pandemic, I was able to sit still and figure myself out and start to see I needed to do more. Yes, I had medication. Yes, I had a therapist, but it was going to require more work for me to get better and to overcome this, because what I'm dealing with is not just a mental thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's a energy thing. My body, my heart, my mind, it is all affected. And that's the thing we don't realize. And as we're going through the motions of life and we're dealing with burnout at home and burnout at work and grief and things, that weighs down on the body. And if we don't pay attention to the body, it's going to get our attention in other ways. So for me, I wasn't listening when I started having the thoughts of not wanting to be alive. When I used to wake up in the morning and say, I did not want to wake up today. I don't want to get out of bed today. I wasn't listening. I tried to ignore it. And it's why it's so important that we talk about it so we can start to recognize whether or not we have those same signs or we're experiencing the same things, because chances are we all have experienced some form of mental or emotional distress.
And, especially as you said, like coming out of COVID, that was such a big shift. I mean, if nobody had ever said that they had some types of, mental stress or whatever, that was a time where us as not even a country, but us as a world could say that this is causing some different things. You can't get to your loved ones. Work has been compromised for many people. There were so many different factors. So I think out of at least for me, that was one of the first times I was like, I'm transitioning to this other part of life, where it's kind of motherhood. It's kind of like, you're approaching middle age. Like, what specifically do you want? What specifically matters to you? And also to all this extra stuff you do, you really don't even have to do it. Like, it really doesn't even matter, because sometimes my personal opinion is a lot of the mental stresses come from some stuff that don't even matter, Keana, when you think about it. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter. Chasing friend groups or statuses or whatever that is. It looks like it adds that extra component, which I think a lot of people they don't know another way to shut it off and say, you don't even have to do it this way.
You're right. That's what it is. And that was the thing that had me so stuck and not wanting to leave, because in my mind, everybody thought at least I thought everybody was looking at me as having the perfect life. I had the perfect family, the perfect husband, the job. I was good. So when that image changed, I got scared. Well, what are people going to say about me? I'm such a failure. I'm 35 years old. How am I going to start over? How am I going to find another man? I got a son, and all these stories and all this stuff that I was creating in my head that did not matter. Only thing I had to do was listen to my heart and soul and get connected to higher power to see that it's happening for you. The pandemic happened for all of us because we all needed that moment to be still. We needed that moment to figure things out in our lives and to decide where to go next. That was all the transition period. Some of us did do the inner work, some of us didn't, and some of us are still struggling after the fact. And me being in corporate, I actually was in HR. I saw what the world was like before, during, and after COVID. And I just left corporate back in April because I started to see that they're trying to go back to the way the world used to be, but we cannot live that way. We have got to start taking better care of our mind, body, and souls. We cannot allow people to overwork or to be burned out or stressed out anymore. That's just not the way that we have to live. We have got to do better for our people. And it starts with us being honest with ourselves. Then we start to see other people. Then we can start to support and uplift others in their journeys and being able to be accountable for each other. That's why we're all here, to serve and support one another. We should never be alone in any of our struggles.
That was so good. If I had some flowers for you, Keana, you said that you worked in HR. So that alone,
sis.
That alone, it's definitely something worth talking about, especially as a Black woman in HR. So, I've served in the spaces and had connections with HR in my time in corporate. So just to go through that alone is a stressor in itself. That alone can be a circus act type thing. And that can get you if you're not careful, because there's all these corporate norms and different things of that nature that in your light and right are trying to navigate through. So, I can only imagine. I do have many friends that are still in corporate, and they are, telling me similar to what you're saying, that baby, we have to do some things that's going to change. People are burnt out. We are spending more time here at work than we're with our families. Yes. There has to be a shift in how we navigate this space. So I know that that's across the board. So, I know you've seen some things.
Yes, ma'am.
Working in the human resources space, but I think probably in that you've gained a lot of valuable things that probably helps you connect to people. Yes. So I want you to talk about that and what you felt that your kind of past life in HR has kind of prepared you for in terms of you exploring this new journey.
When I started in HR, I started almost 17 years ago. And at the time, my focus and my mission was to help people. I just wanted to help and serve people. And I started out as a recruiter and worked my way up to a senior business partner. And during that time, the position changed, responsibilities. I've worked at several different companies. So I experienced so many different types of corporate dynamics. I've worked for primarily male-owned companies, small family-owned companies to large corporations. And the tone was always the same. I kept feeling like I was unfulfilled because the way I was showing up in HR was not the way I was supposed to be showing up. My heart, my soul wants to connect directly with employees. I am passionate about employee engagement, employee development, learning and development, and employee well-being and employee health and wellness. That was what my heart and passion was. I started doing training, started doing little new hire orientations when I worked at the hospital I used to work at. And I enjoyed that, connecting with employees. Most of my background is in employee relations. And again, that allowed me to connect and learn about the employees. And it gave me a chance to see them as people. They weren't employees to me. They are people first and foremost. And the more I started doing that, the more, unbeknownst to me, I started developing my craft and my skill of being able to connect with people and to be able to build this level of vulnerability where they build trust in me. So when I guide them and if I give them guidance and I counsel them and I coach them, I empower them to be the best employee that they can be. And the last position I was in, I wasn't seeing that. And when I started speaking up, well, you know how that story goes. I started speaking up and they didn't like it and it was time for me to go, but I wasn't going to go without a fight because I had an employee who was going through a mental health emergency. And I immediately said, I need to reach out and find out how she is doing because I am she and she is me. And if anything happens to this woman, if she as so much as even have an attempt or ends up in the hospital, I am not going to be okay with that because I didn't do everything within my power to help her. So I reached out to this employee, and because the company I worked at was remote and it was a large company, I didn't get a chance to see her in person, but I did call her and we connected. And she didn't want to open up because I was HR. I'm the op. Nobody trusts me, but I need them to trust me because I'm not HR. I am Keana at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, all day. I am a woman, a child of God, and I'm connecting with you on that same level. So I opened up with this employee and I told her that I experienced the exact same thing and that I had a suicide attempt and she is not alone. And when I did, she opened up and she admitted to me that she was overwhelmed at work, that she didn't feel like she was capable of doing her job. She had just been promoted and it was too much pressure. And she couldn't get help from her leaders because her leaders are overwhelmed, overworked. So what do we do? How do I empower these employees? And the more I kept saying that, the less they were trying to support me. And when God says it's time to go, it's time to go. So when they offered me the severance and said, we think you would be happier somewhere else, you are absolutely correct. Thank you. I appreciate this. And I will be back because I guarantee you I'm going to come back and I'm going to teach them what it was that I wanted to teach them while I was there, but it's going to be in a whole different capacity because now I'm going to come in as a contractor and you're going to have to pay me more for what it is that I'm trying to show you.
Wow, I got chills because there's so many parallels to my
I know,
exit
sis.
out.
We're not alone.
There are so many, I mean, the same exact thing. You know, I was the employee on the other end of the HR side of it. I was the employee that they, investigated for like a year and a half and really we're not gonna get into it because that would be giving them the energy and the power, over to be doing that. But the fact that we are sitting here in 2024 and we are sharing very much similar stories, although we were on different sides of the equation, but still feeling the exact same thing, is something is the reason why these types of platforms are very important, because we need to be able to talk about these things and really to be able to give people support on how to navigate these spaces. Because I was just thinking back to my last run, and it was in 2021 when I finally decided to leave. You know, the mental gymnastics you have to do to not just like, look now, don't play with me. Okay, you know the mental gymnastics it takes to still. I'm just being real, because this is why this platform is here. That alone,
it's a lot. It's overwhelming.
It's just a lot, and we haven't even gotten to the actual task of the job yet.
That part. It's just the dynamics, the energy. The moment you walk through the door, they already labeling you. They already got expectations of you. Remove the expectations. Let's come to agreements. Let's have an agreement with our employees, because you're expecting them. You're putting this added pressure on them, but are you empowering them? Before you give them an expectation, make sure they're ready. Make sure they feel prepared, because the minute that employee knows that they're supported, know that they have a leader that trusts them, that supports them, that empowers them to be their best, they're going to show up. They're going to do the work. They're going to go the extra mile, because they know that they are contributing and that they're valued. And just giving them promotions and throwing money at them is not going to do it, because what you're doing is added pressure, added stress. And they're not able to tell you, this is too much. I really don't know what I'm doing. I need help, because they're afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of their livelihood. And I get it. And you have to be extremely brave and courageous, and you have got to have faith if you are going to take that leap and say, I'm about to leave corporate and I'm about to create my own brand and my own way of living according to my values. And that's what I did. And when the job ended on April 15th, I said, yes, God, what's next? Because I know it's happening for me.
And that's how bold you have to be. Because I said the same thing when I left. I said, what God will do, he will give you an umbrella of grace, right? And that umbrella of grace will take you through that period. But then you'll look up and the umbrella is over there, and he says, your umbrella of grace has moved, darling.
Yep.
And it's clear. So you're going to have to follow this umbrella, because you have to allow my grace to take you from where you're standing to that unknown. And that's the place that we have to be. I want to give you this question, because I think it's good. I want you to think back to maybe your 25-year-old self. I play with these numbers depending on people's journey. Sometimes I say 18, but I think for you, I think you think back to 25-year-old Keana, right? I don't know what she was doing in that period. I don't know what she was doing, right? But I want you to give her a message. I want you to tell her, even right now, like where you are, you may let her know something that you feel right now. But there is power, even in those spaces, and back when we were back then, and we didn't know why the why was happening. It's still power in that, and sometimes we get so far in our journey that we forget to reflect back, because what that does is that it tells you how far you have come, even if you feel like you haven't accomplished anything. So I want you to tell the 25-year-old Keana a message.
25-year-old Keana, I would tell her, you're a new mom. Congratulations. What a wonderful experience. Enjoy the journey and be kind to yourself, because you're not going to get it right. You're not going to get it 100% perfect, but you're going to do the best that you can as a mother. And as long as you show up and continue to love on your son, then you're doing your best. But I will also encourage you to love on yourself the same way you pour in your love into your son and into your partner. I want you to pour that same love into yourself, Keana, because you deserve it. And you don't know how, but you have it in you, because you're a queen and you're bigger than just being a mom and somebody's partner. You're bigger than just getting that degree and just having that title. You have so much value and worth in you, but you got to listen to God, and you got to love yourself. And go back to the therapist and find out what to do about that depression that you were diagnosed with 3 years ago that you failed to accept because you were in such denial. Because Keana, if you don't, it is going to show up later on in life. And eventually you will have to address your mental health. So I'd rather you do it now, Queen, before it gets too late.
That's good.
Yes,
That's
I
good
do.
because when you think back and you're like, well, dang, how did I do it? I didn't have hardly any knowledge, right? At
Nope.
25, and you still were able to do it. So when you have those reflective questions, you like, oh my gosh. For one, you see the grace. You can confirm that grace has been there because
Yes.
I didn't know, Lord, that grace covered
Okay.
me. That grace covered me in my periods of unknown. So you have to be thankful there. And then you can see this version of yourself that's going to be forever evolving, because when we come back, 10 years from now, you will
Yep.
tell this version something else too. So
Yep.
trusting that process is so important. And that was such a beautiful message. I want to give you the time now to tell people where they can find you, where they can find your book, so that we have all this information included in our podcast details.
Thank you. So you can follow me on Instagram at I am Keana, Keana, Shatteen, Shatteen, empowerment at, oh, I'm sorry. That is the handle. I am Keana Shatteen Empowerment on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook at KS Empowerment, as well as TikTok and Threads under I am Keana Shatteen Empowerment. And my book is available now for pre-order. Healing Out Loud is available now. It will be released in September during Suicide Awareness Month, because it's the perfect time. As a survivor of suicide, this is my honor to recognize those that we have lost, as well as the survivors, because those that we have lost, they're not here to share their voice and share their story. So I'm doing this in their honor. So for everyone that pre-orders the first 150 copies, you will get a signed copy from me, as well as some other freebies. And a portion of the proceeds will also be donated to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness Walk, which is in September during Suicide Prevention Week. And I will also be in the walk. So that's why I am donating funds. So I thank you so much, soulmates, for supporting me and listening to my story. And please keep following me and share, because even if my story doesn't resonate with you, I guarantee you it'll resonate with someone that's close to you.
Yeah, this has been a great episode. I want to thank
Thank
Keana
you.
for coming and sharing positive energy and really, really teaching us more about vulnerability and what that can do to transform not only yourself, but the lives of others. It has been a great episode of Her Voice Shines podcast. We want to thank this amazing guest again. And until next time, I encourage you, as always, to let your voice shine.
Thank you. Bye.